So tell the folks a little bit about the 75th anniversary program, the campaign, and what you guys are going through this transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for having us here to talk about the USO. As the video showed, 75 years and counting of supporting our service members and their families in peace and in wartime. And I think as the piece conveyed, we continue to look for ways to be as relevant as possible to our constituents, to our service members and their families. You saw in yesteryear great opportunities for us to entertain troops in the conflict zones. We still do that today, but we do so much more. Proud to say, these 180 locations that we talk about being worldwide to always be by the side of our service members. Next year we'll be able to say that we have over 200 of those locations, because we continue to grow and look for ways to serve with our service members and their families, whether here in the States or deployed overseas or in expeditionary environments around the world. Our 75th anniversary, we talk a little bit about our mission. It really hasn't changed, but we've talked a little bit about changing the way that we talk about what we do. Our mission is really about connection, connecting our service members to their family, to their home, and to their country. So whether it's our entertainment tours, our centers around the world, or some of the great programs that we do in transition, it's about that connection.
So the tours around the world are great. I mean, like most folks, I grew up watching the Bob Hope specials. And I've had the chance to go on one of them with General Dempsey. So when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs travels, often, depending on the chairman's choice, they'll time it with a USO tour and hit some hot spots and hit bases around the world and bring folks with them. I think, with us, we had Jordan Sparks and we had Big Shot Rob Ory, NBA legend. And to hit those spots are really amazing events. They're exactly like you see them on TV. Folks gathered in hangars that really need a break, could really use just those couple of hours to take them out of where they are, or families in Germany and places like that. This was something totally different though. So explain, what's the difference between going into a USO lounge at an airport now versus what you're envisioning or what's already happening, transitioning, like we were saying, from cookies and care packages to a real service moment for folks coming out for the military? Yeah,
Kevin, I'd say the biggest change that we've seen, particularly as we've been serving troops that are deployed in the war zone, we have centers that are in Afghanistan. We had many centers in Iraq. We actually have a lot of service to our service members that are back there, so to speak. And I think we've really changed the way that we support our service members by, again, connecting them to their family and their home and their country. One of those ways, and we all today know that, when I was actually in the early 90s, I'm deployed on board a fast attack submarine. I got 6 pieces of paper with little dashes on them and said, hey, you can send one of these, you can have your family send you a little bit of a telegram once a month. Right? And so today, obviously, with great technology, we have opportunities to do things much differently. So we do this in this mission of connection, make sure that in all of our USO centers worldwide, but particularly in the conflict zones, that they have an opportunity for service members to engage in internet connectivity, voice over internet protocol, making sure that they can connect home with their families and their home and their country. We're also starting to dive out into really sending that same connectivity services outside of our centers and deploying those solutions with units that aren't near a USO center. So again, trying to really be by their side, regardless of whether they're coming through an airport or as we continue to build out our presence overseas, making sure that we're there with them when they need us most.
So talk about then the new campaign, the Force Behind the Force. What's that about?
Yeah, so we've got a new public service announcement out that talks about encouraging men and women, people from the public, to be that force behind the forces. This is a very friendly audience, not only to the USO, but certainly to the defense establishment and to our service members and their families. But we all know that we are a smaller and smaller part of our population as time goes on. So the USO, we see our opportunity to help bridge that civil-military drift by reminding folks that it's important to support our service members by being that force behind the force, supporting them in many ways. It might be through contributions, it might be through their time as volunteers, it might be through other ways, but to remind them that to have a strong, effective, resilient force, they need support from our greater public, and that's how they can be a part of the forces behind the force behind the forces.
Good. So we have another video. You guys are good with your videos to
Yeah.
maybe show us the visualization. Well, let's watch that visualization. Let's watch that video now, if we can get that queued up.
That's great.
I am the force behind the brave men and women who love this country so dearly, they go into harm's way to defend it.
I am the force behind those who stand between us and all who mean us harm. And for those serving far from home, I am the force that makes sure home has their back.
I am the force behind all who serve, connecting them to every comfort of family, home, and country possible.
We are the force.
We are the force.
Behind the forces.
Behind the forces.
We are the force behind the forces.
Visit USO.org/force to learn how you can be the force behind the forces.
So this is interesting for me. I mean, as a reporter, there's a news story about the civilian and military divide.
Yes.
Everything from healthcare to the use of an all volunteer force to conduct warfare abroad, how it affects our elections. And you guys have started transition programs as well. Talk about the need versus the receptivity to those programs, or maybe any kind of myths or realities that maybe we're missing or not understanding about. We all know everyone says they support the troops, and that's easy to say, but organizing it and coming together, bringing together the network of just the hiring programs alone. There are thousands of them, right?
Yeah,
across
absolutely.
the country.
Well, so as the public service announcement tried to demonstrate, we're really trying to reach out to a demographic that might not know the military as well as those of us in this room know it. And part of that knowledge is understanding that there's a spectrum of service that service members and their families provide from the time they enter the military through their training, their deployments, their many PCS moves, perhaps retirement, getting out in general, or perhaps unfortunately being wounded, and then transitioning out of the service. So along that whole spectrum, it's we at the USO strategically say, hey, we need to make sure that we're providing services, providing programs and services across that entire spectrum to, quote, always be by their side. So on the front end, we have engaged in an opportunity to make sure that the USO is present in as many military entrance processing stations as possible, so that as new recruits come in and their families come in, they can be introduced to the USO and know what we can do for them through their service. And then at the end, Kevin, as you mentioned, we want to be able to play an important part in helping support the transition of our service members and their families out of the military. We all know, 200 to 250,000 service members leaving the service every year is an ongoing drumbeat. And as you point out, there are many, many organizations and the government and the military services that are out there helping provide that support as they make that transition. The USO, we see ourselves playing an important role in that because of our scale and our scope. With 180 plus locations around the world, we are present in those locations where those service members are making that transition. So we can create programs, we can bring program partners together to help with all the facets of transition, whether it's the job search, family resiliency, relocation, hooking up with your VA benefits, all of that gamut, that holistic transition is an area that we believe not only the USO, but the entire society has a role to play.
Right, and that was the focus of the Fort Carson event that I mentioned with where President Bush came out. It was actually his first major appearance in front of troops at a base since he left office, which was a fun experience to see, the non-president, President Bush, come out to talk to the troops.
Actually, wasn't he?
And with the Chamber of Commerce there and other organizations coming together, there's a real sense of a shift. Like I said, defense, we like to look at the future of defense. So the future of this issue of civilian-military divide, things are improving, it seems. They're changing. The organizations are coming together. Umbrellas are being formed to make those connections. I want to move to the next part here. We have another guest with us. One of the things also at this event that we showcased were specific experiences of service members who have come out of the military and what they're going through. So there's a great PBS documentary program called Road Trip Nation, and this current episode of or season of it is called The Next Mission. And we have one of the road trippers with us today, Helen Chandler, a veteran herself. We'll bring her out right now. Helen, can you come out and join us? Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good to see you again. So I think first, are we supposed to watch the movie first? Let's watch the documentary. You want to tell us quickly about it, and then we'll set up the little trailer for it?
Okay. Hi, I'm Helen Chandler. Myself and 2 other road trippers, we went across the U.S., the southern portion, and we interviewed a bunch of veterans who have already transitioned into civilian life, and we asked them what steps that we could take in our transition to help us through our journey. It was about 30 days in an RV with us and 2 film crew, and yeah, it's going to be on PBS soon, and I hope you enjoy it. I've heard a lot of great reviews about it because a lot of veterans don't know how to transition or who to ask for help, and I think this gives us all a little bit of insight on how to do that.
Okay, so let's cue that video and take a look. I think this is the trailer for the series.
No one can stay in the military forever. We all get out one day. It's just something that we don't think about, though. When you go back to civilian life, it's different.
It took me a while to overcome my depression and the realization of I'm out.
When I got hurt, everything was stripped from me. It was taken away in an instant. I didn't know what I was gonna do.
You know, I feel like an alien. I feel like I'm not even from this world.
What's my next step? Where's my next calling?
What am I gonna do now? And be passionate about it like I was passionate about the military. So we're gonna be going on a road trip. We're going from the West Coast to the East Coast.
And we're gonna be interviewing veterans along the way.
Gaining experience and knowledge about their transition to the civilian life.
The hardest part about transitioning for me was becoming an individual.
Instead of focusing on, you're never gonna do this again, look at all the things you can do. Your greatest weapons are right here and in here.
We learn to face our fears and so use those things we learned in the military to not just live in the civilian world, but thrive.
These people, they are really just down-to-earth, amazing people.
This is for home defense in case ISIS comes after us.
Setting out across the country, bonding with all the amazing veterans, it's therapeutic.
I even hate categorizing it, military life, civilian life. Everybody has different roads and avenues. It's life.
This has been 30 days, and it's been many things, and I'm excited to see what the future has. I'm forever changed.
So I'm glad it's already airing on PBS stations around the country. It started, do you know how many episodes it is? How long?
I think it's just 1 hour long.
Just
episode.
the one documentary?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I was mistaken. Okay. Tell us just about the trip. How was it? I mean,
the trip, it was interesting. We started in San Diego, right. And we went from San Diego to Hermosa Beach, and then to Las Vegas, and we interviewed, as you saw, the gun lady, Jacqueline Carzoza. We got to ride around in the NASCAR with Jesse Owuji. And then from there, we went on to Arizona and El Paso, Destin, Atlanta, and then we came back up here, and our final trip was in DC, our final stop. I think we interviewed anywhere between 13 and 14 veterans, Robert Kiyosaki being one of them when we stopped in the Phoenix, Tucson area.
What were the more memorable ones for you?
I think the ones where we got to do a lot of hands-on experience of
driving a NASCAR.
Driving a NASCAR. You wouldn't realize how much adrenaline you get going 180 miles an hour in some silly little loop, but it is so much fun.
Sounds like the Beltway. You know?
I think Jason Worth knows how.
I said we go 8 miles an hour because it's the Beltway.
Okay, yes.
What did you learn from the more memorable things that you learned from them? Yeah.
You have to find something that you have your heart into, and you have to ask for assistance. You need to figure out how to network, and that's the one thing. When you're in the military, you're kind of told not to talk about yourself, right. Not to network, kind of, do your own thing. But you have to gain the knowledge somehow. You have to Google or, as they told me, go into LinkedIn and find people who have the same common interests as you. They work for the same organizations you're interested in. Eventually, you'll find somebody who's willing to help you get into that type of work. I didn't realize, that there were all sorts of other sites to go to, such as LinkedIn. I couldn't, I didn't know go to Bradley Morris or Orion for assistance. The Soldier for Life program, the 360 Alliance. There are organizations that could help me with my transition, making it easier. Get a better resume. I wish the high schools would really teach that, and I wish the military would give you an actual class on how to make a federal resume when you get out as well.
Really? Those simple touches.
Just simple little things that could make networking so much easier. And then business cards. People aren't going to remember your name, but if you give them a piece of paper with your name and what you want to do, it's really actually a better way of getting in touch and them staying in touch with you.
Did you get any sense of, was there any kind of disconnect between, let's say, ages, for example, or different services, or whatever your MOS was coming out of? It was easier for some people or not for others? Or is the whole community kind of at least trying to come together and get it a little better, a little right?
From Bernard's experience of what he told me, the Air Force didn't really offer very much in his transition. The Army has the ACAP, but it still doesn't, I felt like it didn't offer as much assistance as they say they provide. And as far as Navy, I'm not really sure. Age-wise, the ages of the people that we interviewed, they varied from early 20s to what Robert Kiyosaki's in his 60s.
Yeah. It does, that's what I meant. It doesn't necessarily make a difference. Go ahead.
Well, one thing Helen said that I thought was really important is, talking about the various services. So, the Army's programs, the Navy's programs, all the different services. I think that it's important to understand that there's a purpose, there's a shared mission that we have as nonprofit organizations in industry, as well as with our government and our military services, to help support that transition. Invariably, when we're talking about what the services are doing, they are talking to every single one of those 250,000 service members transitioning en masse. And so it's difficult sometimes to provide, I think what Helen's talking about is some very tailored approaches, some customized approaches, so that an individual understands how they can best make their own individual transition. So to complement that, I think industry as well as the nonprofits can help bring that to bear by providing not only resources but programs where you can have a more of an individualized opportunity to get that support and help make you affect a more effective transition.
So where do they start? So we have an audience here in the room. We've got people who watch who are, from, a lot of these folks are from defense industry companies, yes, or they have their own defense backgrounds or families, something like that. But someone wants to help, or they have a program they help, or their company has for example, as a reporter, we get lots of pitches for stories, and lots of well-meaning companies tell us how, hey, look at us, we've hired 20 veterans. I'm like, that's great. This company has 200. This company has 2,000, and we've all been doing this, frankly, for 10, 15 years by now in the current wars.
Right.
So what's the best way folks are coming together or can come together to start?
Yeah, I think that it's that critical mass idea that you're centering in on. I think individual companies are doing their best in their own sort of way to support veteran transition. The opportunity, as an example, working with the USO, we have our USO Transition 360 Alliance. You can see it on our website. It talks about one of the components that we have is all of these USO centers that we have worldwide. We're starting to build out these transition sites. USO RP6 sites is what we're calling them. And it's really an opportunity for companies to get plugged in, provide support to those local transitioning service members. And so from an employer or from a company standpoint, so much of what you do not only support your customers, but also to engage your employees are really about that local support. So having a partner like the USO to be able to provide that support in the communities in which you serve and in which your companies exist and your employees work is really one of the ways I think that can help add that critical mass.
So Helen, when you were in the services, would it have been different for you, a different experience for you had the USO centers have this been set up and ready to go versus what you were explaining, the way to go find help when you're a service member, knowing you're going to get out?
I feel it would have been better. It would have helped. A lot of my questions would have been answered. As I was transitioning out, the USO and the 360 Alliance and Soldier for Life, they were all working together. So the program is getting better. Yeah. It's just unfortunate that it's like bigger locations like Fort Benning, Georgia, or up here in DC, whereas the soldiers are transitioning all across the board everywhere. If they would just have one advocate, even at like the smaller satellite bases, would be really convenient for everyone.
That's interesting too. And I remember that at Fort Carson, the commander at Fort Carson, the base commander, is he's new. He's like 2 months old, right?
Yeah,
Didn't he come from the 75th, I think, Fort Bragg?
That's right.
So one of his early insights to us was how he was surprised at how the op tempo, the pace of deployments, was so much higher than he expected. The whole base seemed to be coming and going, and all the families were affected by this. And most Americans maybe don't think of that because we're not in the big warfare. We don't have 150,000 deployed in Iraq. It's the special operators that are doing the fighting. People don't realize how much readiness training is ongoing, the enabling that goes on with the ISIS or just with what's going on in Europe and Russia. Sure. The point of him with that was there was no time for this stuff. And this is something he remembered from or other older generation veterans that said from previous years. There just wasn't enough time from whatever your current job was to your date that you were transitioning, that you were out. Right. You didn't have 6 months to spend going to resume class or going to some sort of outreach programs at the base or off base with local businesses, even all these wonderful ideas and programs, because you were working up to the day you were done, and you were eager to do that, wanted to do that, and then bam, you were out. Right. I mean, is that the kind of experience you had?
Pretty much that was, you get your 6 month notice. They always tell you to start looking to transition a year before you get out, or at least you're gonna get out. But for me, I wasn't really prepared to get out. I was given a 120-day notice of, hey, you're being retired. And at that point, you pedal as fast as you can to get the momentum to transition. And how do you transition? I put my resume out there to everywhere I could, all the sites, and then it was, I'm out. Now what do I do? How do I transition? When I was like, I really just want to go back and serve. This wasn't my calling, was to be out.
Right.
And I think we've seen too, I mean, Helen's experience is probably indicative of a lot of people through the generations that have served in the military with that same mindset. Hey, it's mission first. But I think the language has changed a lot inside the services, and at DoD, talking about, transition really starts, once you actually enter into the military. It's an important, I think, to the NCOs out there, to our younger, officers that are leading, to understand that their job not only is the mission at hand, but also to ensure that they're affecting that larger benefit for their service members, for their troops, so to speak. You think about the Secretary's, discussion around force of the future even. I mean, that's really about us making sure that as we bring new service members in, they understand that we as a community have an obligation to them to ensure that whenever they transition out, that they're going to be able to affect that as successfully as possible.
Right, it's worth mentioning force of the future, which has lots of aspect to it, but I think what's relevant to here is the idea that if not now, in some services eventually, there'll be more creativity, freedom to come in mid-career to a MOS, a job that the military needs, whether it's like a doctor, cyber, or something like that. It's not every soldier, airman, Marine, sailor is going to be somebody that comes in at 18 and is just on this linear path until some drop-off point. That there is a little bit more fluidity to help with that as well. But, well, at least with the little time that we had, I just wanted to highlight these programs I thought were a good, a bit of a news story of something that's really developing in between the communities of the military and the civilian world, trying to come together, and something just interesting with the USO as well. Like I said, we all remember the Bob Hope days and what's going on, and if we can close that gap a little bit, it might be better for everyone. So thank you. Any final words for?
Well, no, I just want to thank you, Defense One, for giving us the opportunity to help try to close that gap. And I know that individually and also a lot of companies represented here are great supporters, not only of our military, but of the USO. So I want to say thank you to you all as well.
And Helen, you going to do another road trip like that again?
I would love to. It was amazing. Felt like soldier all over again.
30 days in an RV, it's all good?
Just like field. Just like being in the field.
Right. Did you have to eat MREs?
We should have. Probably would have been better.
All right. Well, thank you very much, both of you. Please, round of applause for our panelists here.